With the rotation coming right around the corner, and sure, it may be still a few months away, I figured it's never too early to get ready for rotation. In today's video, we'll be diving into some of my tips that I think will be helpful for you guys when it comes to preparing yourself for rotation. Hey everyone, it's Scar coming at you with another Magic the Gathering video. If you like the video, hit that thumbs up button. It definitely helps out a lot. If you're new here, want to post new videos on the channel, hit that subscribe button. It puts a +1/+1 counter on the channel. With that being said, guys, let's just dive into the video and let's just talk about it. So I think this one is actually something to kind of consider when it comes to being a Magic the Gathering player. Essentially, the first thing that you may want to do is kind of assess where your decks are, kind of what decks you may have to completely rebuild or completely scrap when rotation happens. Because a lot of the decks that are currently meta-style decks are going to be rotating out, and a lot of the cards that make up those meta-style decks will be leaving as well. Essentially, those decks are no longer going to be useful unless you're looking to possibly, move over into playing Historic. Then go ahead, you can keep the decks around. But I would do at some point, some sort of spring cleaning, because if you're someone like me, I like to build a lot of decks or bring a lot of decks into the table. Depending on where your collection is, I do have a wide array of decks, as you can kind of see here, that I've built over the course of set period of time that I haven't gone back through to kind of really get rid of anything. And at some point, these decks are no longer going to be played in standard, so I need to kind of go about and either delete them or just kind of remove them for the sake and purposes. Other side note to kind of note out here to some players who may be on the budget, who may not have a lot of decks. The one thing I will point out at some point, Magic Arena, at least they did last year, they kind of released some new starter decks for those players who may be on a budget, who kind of only went towards building, up their starter decks. You'll be getting a new starter deck that will have some of the newer some of the newer sets that will be releasing over the past year. They'll be reintroduced to the game to kind of give you a refresh on your starter decks that you currently have. The other benefit too is if you do play the mono color starter decks, if you haven't made any adjustments on them, and as long as you have those arena specific cards that have that little A symbol in the middle of the card on the right hand side, those decks will also be kind of good, and those be also rotation proof as well. Just figured I'd give you the heads up just in case you're kind of worried and you're like, well, I don't have a lot of decks, all I have is starter decks. You're still good. If you haven't checked out my last video, I think I went over the Orzhov Angels deck that you can definitely get a free deck that is actually rotation proof just right out of the box. So if that's something you're interested in, I'll leave a card for that up in the top right hand corner. Now let's go on to the next tip. So my next tip is actually kind of another important one. If you're someone who's looking to build another new deck when it comes to MTG Arena, maybe you've saved up some currency or kind of in the process, you're like, okay, I have my next deck I want to build and I need to craft these cards in order to make it happen. The one thing I would want to do before you go ahead and build that deck, even if you have all the currency to do so, is you probably want to assess the deck overall and kind of see, what sets the cards that are in the deck come from. Because there's going to be a chunk of sets that do rotate out from Throne of Eldraine all the way up to M21, and all those cards in those sets will now move over to the historic format, therefore no longer being playable in standard. And if you do go ahead and craft them at the time of watching this video before possibly rotation, those cards are no longer playable, and therefore you're just going to be technically using them on borrowed time if really all your focus is playing standard. So the one thing I would go through is just kind of go through and look at your symbols. Like this one's a Throne of Eldraine card. This one's good from ZENDIKAR Rising because ZENDIKAR Rising came out last September, so therefore you still have a good long while to use this card. Same thing, Throne of Eldraine, M21, this rotates out. This is technically M21 as well, even though it has a symbol from I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it also has a symbol for a set that's in historic anyway. But yet again, it's something that's going to rotate out. Lovestruck Beast, Throne of Eldraine, Khazdu Mammoth is fine. It's from ZENDIKAR Rising. Old Growth Troll is fine because it's from Call Time. Yorvo is rotating out because it's from Throne. Essentially, this is the process you want to go through in any deck that you're going to import or build yourself. If you have any cards that you need to still craft, if that you're looking to make a couple extra copies of, just so you can have it to complete the deck, I would reassess it just because of this inevitability. You don't want to waste your currency. You saved your time, saved up over time to just kind of use a card for a few months and therefore have to replace it immediately. So that is something I would also recommend doing if this is something you're looking into. Another thing I would do, depending on what kind of decks you do have in your collection already made, is I would assess the decks that you currently have built and kind of assess what cards you need to essentially replace at some point. As you can kind of see here, this is my Witherbloom Work in Progress deck that I do have my free-to-play account that I went ahead and built. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to essentially just do what we did on the cards that we want to craft for the particular deck prior, we're going to look at cards that are in the deck that we may have to replace if rotation happens. This one I do think is actually pretty good, as most of the cards in the deck, outside I think of the Jungle Hollow and also the Bastion of Remembrance, most of the cards in this deck are actually pretty new when it comes to MTG Arena. These sets have been released in the past 3 sets, so we're overall pretty good there. So for the most part, this deck is actually not going to get messed up too much, just because, like I said, most of the cards in the deck are essentially rotation proof just because of when they released out. So overall, what if we, like I said, Bastion of Remembrance is from Ikoria, that's replaceable, that needs to be replaced, and also Jungle Hollow is from M21, I think also Ikoria, so that's also another reason why it has to be replaced, unless we get a new set of them come D&D Forgotten Realms. I don't think there's been any spoilers, so I don't really know what kind of land set we're going to get with the new D&D set, if it's just going to be more snarls or if we're going to get some whole new brand new type of land, because there are quite a few lands rotating out. That's another area where you may want to look at and kind of assess what lands you may need to either focus into. So if you're looking to build like this black-green deck, maybe you need more pathways, maybe you need more snarls, as these lands are going to be fine for rotation. We're not going to have to worry about them rotating out, so they're not going to have to be replaced. And like I said before, kind of talking about things that are rotating out, if you're someone who goes ahead and buys packs from the store, and that's fine if you do, just remember what, like I said before, everything else, as we kind of look through here, everything from M21, Ikoria, Theros, and Throne of Eldraine, these are all sets that are going to be rotating out, so I wouldn't waste your currency on opening packs from these particular sets unless you're looking to possibly play some more historic come the fall when the sets rotate out. If you're going to buy any packs, I'd buy anything from Zendikar Rising and up, and eventually D&D The Forgotten Realms, and then the set in September, and then also I think the new set in November. So those are the sets that are going to be fine, but at that point, rotation will have happened, and you will know that these sets are in standard, whereas these sets M21 and back have rotated out. But that's another thing just to point out. Now, another thing I would say that this is something that could come from just saving up for particular sets, but this is a time that you probably want to save up all your currency, not just for the new set for D&D Forgotten Realms, but also for rotation, because you know, the meta is going to go through some sort of shift at some point. We're going to kind of get an idea of what cards are going to be standout, things, as at some point also during the summertime, maybe around the same time they actually introduce the new sets to the game, the new starters for the game. They usually set up an event, almost kind of like the historic brawl event that's been popping up. Essentially, what it is kind of like a rotation event that essentially has only the new cards and none of the old cards. So anything from Zendikar Rise and up will be in this format. Like I said, there's nothing that officially says that they'll be doing this year, but they did it last year, so I would only assume it'd just be easier for them to do it again this year, because it's something I did enjoy. It helped me kind of figure out some decks that I would want to play in the fall once rotation physically happens, and it did give me a decent break from the meta, even though I think at that point the Adventures deck that played Lucky Clover was kind of the predominant deck at the time, and then eventually those cards, Lucky Clover, to get banned. So it's just one of those things that kind of showed how strong that card was once it was in more of a smaller bubble. But it is one of those things that is quite interesting. So I would want to save your currency for just not packs of Forgotten Realms, but also currency you may want to go into to craft certain cards from like Strixhaven, Zendikar Rise, or Kaldheim, just because you may not have, depending on when you've joined, maybe you don't have a lot of cards from those particular sets, but if those are cards you want to, craft to kind of build this deck idea that you kind of have, I would try to save as much currency as you have, just so you have some, room to kind of, buy certain things and kind of swap things in and out. It's just going to overall make, your deck construction a lot better when it comes to building a new deck. Now, the one thing I will say as well, just real quick as well, look out for some of these events that pop up in Arena every now and then. Right now, like I said, if you are someone who's more on a budget, but maybe you're someone who does draft to kind of build up your collection, I would completely avoid the Theros Beyond Death draft currently that's going on as the quick draft, as being the cheaper of the two versions of draft that you can do. Currently, I think the premier draft is still Strixhaven, so that one's fine. You can go ahead and draft Strixhaven because those cards aren't leaving, but there's no point in you really drafting Theros if your focus is only on standard, just as these cards are going to rotate out. So after you're done in a few months, these cards are no longer going to be viable for your collection to play your standard decks that you're using these cards for. So this is something I would probably want to avoid unless you're really trying to do this so you can farm the gems, if that's something you're into and don't really care about the cards you physically get out of it. But like I said, it is also rotating out in the next 2 days, so I'm not sure what the next set is. So if someone knows what that is, I actually haven't taken a look at the calendar to see what the next quick draft that's rotating in right before the D&D set comes out. Let me know down in the comments below. Now, this last tip is not really a tip in particular, but it's something that they did special. It was this special egg. I'll probably have a link for it down below because I have to actually do some research into it. But essentially what it is that there was this special egg that you could actually acquire just for logging in prior to rotation. And essentially what happened is that when rotation happened, it was just like this egg that kind of offered you some bonus currency that kind of helped give you that little bit of boost to your overall cards that you can use to craft more cards in MTG Arena, which is definitely something that benefits you as a player, especially someone who's on a budget. Just getting some free currency is always a plus. I don't remember if it had any gems or any experience in it, but essentially it was just like this free egg that when current rotation did happen, once you logged in after rotation, it opened up and you got to claim your rewards, which is definitely always very good. The other thing I would also note out before I kind of finish out this video, just remember to check your email as we kind of get through the summer, just in case they ever send out any more of those codes for some free packs. With the set of the Forgotten Realms coming out in July, there will more than likely be an email that'll be sent out around the same time to advertise like, hey, there's a new set in MTG Arena, enter this code to get 3 free packs. If not, I'll try my best to make sure I post it somewhere here on the channel just to give you guys in the loop, so that you guys aren't going to be missing out on some free cards, because that is always very good. Yet again, if you haven't seen a video on how to redeem free cards, I did actually do a video here on the channel. I'll have a card up here on the top of the screen in case you want to go check that out. If this is the first video you've seen and you're kind of wondering what I'm talking about, free packs and whatnot, that will show you actually how to redeem them, as well as also where to go to look for all the codes that you could enter into your account to get as many free packs as possible. With that being said, guys, if you like the video, hit that like button down below. It definitely helps out a lot. If you're new here, when I post new videos on the channel, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you all later. Also want to give a quick shout out to the channel members. As you see your name here on the screen, you can also become a channel member as well by clicking the join button down below by the subscribe button or the link in the description. But thank you again for supporting the channel.